The cold November rain fell in silver sheets across the quiet suburbs of Maplewood, a place where life moved at a gentle pace, slow enough that loneliness often echoed louder than footsteps. On nights like this, Emily Carter felt every beat of her empty home more sharply, as though the walls themselves whispered reminders of a past she'd tried to bury. She stood near the window, watching droplets slide down the glass, wondering when her world had come so quiet, so colorless, so painfully unchanged. It had been years since she'd felt truly seen. Years since a touch had made her remember she was still alive beneath the layers of responsibility, loss, and the carefully maintained calm that everyone admired but no one understood. If you believe in kindness, in healing, and in second chances that appear when least expect them, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps bring more stories like this to those who need them. Emily was 41. Graceful, composed, and known in town as woman who endured heartbreak with dignity. Her husband Mark had passed away suddenly 5 years earlier, leaving Ben memories that drifted through every room like fragile ghost light. For a long time, she couldn't imagine opening her heart again. She wore grief like a second skin, not obvious to strangers but woven into her every breath. Her days were predictable. Early morning coffee, managing the bookstore she inherited, and evenings spent reading until sleep finally wrapped around her like a tired blanket. She convinced herself she was fine. She convinced everyone she was fine. But deep inside, a quiet ache pulsed. An ashy she'd hidden for so long that she believed it had faded completely until the day Daniel Hayes walked into her life. Daniel was 26, recently moved to Maplewood after leaving a high-pressure corporate job in Boston. He came into her bookstore on a slow afternoon, shaking rain from his hair, his eyes bright with curiosity and warmth. He carried a softness she hadn't seen in a long time. A gentleness that felt rare and unguarded. The kind that belonged to a man who still believed life held beauty even in its most broken pieces. Emily noticed him instantly, though she tried not to. He asked her for recommendations, not just for books, but for places to explore, places where Simeon could feel human again. His words lingered with her longer than she expected. She found herself smiling in a way she hadn't in years. It felt strange, liberating, terrifying. Daniel became a regular visitor. He would sit in the corner of the shop with a stack of novels, scribbling notes, occasionally looking up to catch her eye. Their conversations were never meant to mean anything. They were innocent exchanges about stories, life observations, and the little things that made days easier. But slowly, quietly, something began to shift inside Emily. She felt seen. Not as a widow, not as Simeon strong because she had to be. Not as the woman who ran the bookstore, but simply as herself, one evening. As she was closing the shop, Daniel stopped by to return a book. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow through the windows. She was locking the last shelf when she felt a sudden wave of dizziness rush through her. It had been happening lately. Exhaustion from long days and the weight she still carried internally. Before she could steady herself, Daniel stepped toward her, his hands gently catching her arms to keep her from falling. His touch was warm, steady, grounding. In that brief moment, something inside her trembled, awakened, stirred in a way she hadn't felt since. She was a much younger woman full of dreams and a beating heart that wasn't afraid to hope. She quickly peeled back, embarrassed, murmuring Thatch was fine. But her cheeks burned, her heartbeat flared, and she realized that his touch had sparked something she didn't know she could still feel. Over the next weeks, Emily found herself anticipating visits. She hated how vulnerable that made her feel, and yet she craved the aliveness he brought into her days. He cared, he listened. He saw her strength without ignoring her fragility. And somehow, in all the ways she never expected, his presence began stitching pieces of her heart back together. Still, she struggled. Still, she battled with herself. Doubts crept in day after day, whispering questions she couldn't silence. Was she being naive? Was she crossing a line her heart wasn't ready to cross? Was she betraying the man she had loved for half her life by letting someone else step into the quiet, untouched rooms of her soul? Every night she stared at the ceiling, her chest tight with guilt and fear, reliving moments she thought she had buried years ago. Grief she assumed had settled finally began stirring again softly at first, then with a force that left her breathless. And yet, every time she saw Daniel, every time he smiled at her like she mattered in a way she'd forgotten she could, something inside her softened against her will. One snowy afternoon, just days before Christmas, Daniel walked into the shop with 2 steaming cups of hot chocolate. Emily gave him a skeptical look. She never drank hot chocolate at work. But Daniel only chuckled quietly and said, "You looked like you needed something warm." It wasn't the cocoa that warmed her. It was the gentleness behind the thought. When she reached to take the cup, their fingertips brushed, just the lightest touch, and the feeling she'd tried to push away returned instantly. A stirring, a flicker, the thump of something awakening after years of silence. Daniel noticed the way she froze for a heartbeat. His expression softened, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he laid his hand lightly over hers, tender and uncertain, more a question than a gesture. Asking without words. Waiting without pressure. And this time, Emily didn't pull back. Her breath faltered as grief, longing, loneliness, and old emotions she'd locked away surged through her like a wave breaking after a long storm. She had convinced herself that her heart no longer knew how to move towards someone new. Yet here it was, nudging her toward warmth instead of fear. Daniel's eyes held no demand, only respect, patience, and a quiet, trembling kindness that eased the sharp edges of her defenses. He didn't try to kiss her. He didn't lean in. He simply held her hand in a way that told her he understood. He wasn't here to replace the past or rewrite her memories. He was simply here. For her. And somehow that simple touch rekindled a part of her she believed had gone silent. The day her husband took his final breath, Emily slowly began to rediscover herself. She started wearing colors. Again, soft blues, warm reds, gentle greens, shades she had forgotten she once loved. She changed her hair, let it fall differently, allowed herself to feel pretty again. Her laughter started returning, at first small and shaky, then fuller, freer. She took walks in the park, read poetry she hadn't touched in years, cooked meals she once enjoyed but stopped making after her loss. She felt life returning to her the way winter loosens its grip and lets the world thaw. A degree at a time, but growth always comes with shadows, people in the town whispered when they saw her with Daniel. Old friends exchanged looks that felt like judgments disguised as concern. Their stares pressed down on her like frost on fragile petals, feeding the doubts she tried so hard to silence. Even her sister Anna, gently but firmly, reminded her that people might take things the wrong way. And one night, everything inside Emily collapsed. She stood in her kitchen, gripping the counter as tears streamed unchecked. Memories of her husband and the quiet hope she felt for her future collided painfully inside her. She didn't know which path to choose. She didn't know which version of herself she was allowed to be anymore. The next morning at the bookstore, Daniel found her quieter than usual. He didn't pry. He simply stepped beside her, offering the kind of warmth that felt like shelter on a cold day. When she finally looked at him, her eyes shimmered with tears she had tried so hard to hide. He reached out and ran his hand gently along her arm, not flirtatious, not bold, just a touch meant to say, "I'm here. You don't have to carry this alone." It grounded her. It steadied her. It didn't spark desire, it sparked courage. And in that moment, Emily finally understood. She wasn't drawn to Daniel because he was younger. She wasn't replacing anything or trying to fill a void. Her heart was opening because after years of numbness, someone was finally allowing her to feel human again, and she deserved that. She deserved warmth. She deserved healing. She deserved a life that didn't end with her grief. The turning point arrived one soft spring evening as cherry blossoms drifted gently through the park. Emily told Daniel everything, her fears, her guilt, the whispers from the town, the parts of her still tangled and lost. Daniel listened silently, fully, with a stillness that made her feel seen and protected in a way she hadn't felt in years. When she finished, he took a slow breath and extended his hand, not demanding, simply offering. Emily took it not because she was ready for a sweeping love story, But because she was finally ready for a new beginning, their connection deepened, not fast, not dramatic, but gently, a steady warmth instead of a wildfire, a quiet flame instead of a storm, healing, not replacing, softness, not pressure. Emily learned how to smile from her heart again. Daniel learned the beauty of nurturing someone delicately together. They discovered that age wasn't a boundary when two souls found each other in the right moment, and Emily's heart, tired, guarded, once convinced it had reached its end, woke again, with a tenderness she never expected to feel. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these emotional stories reach others who need them. Special request: comment below. Healing can happen at any age.